it doesn't actually make sense unless you recognize it's all about political pandering.
Now, J.D. Vance, Law and Order, they're lying about crime. John Lott's written brilliantly about this. They're playing with the statistics. These cities, especially, but other places too, but these cities are extremely dangerous. We've never seen carjacking like...
One vote present and 176 votes.
Yes, hello, my beautiful friends. It is an amazing day, and I'm so grateful that you are here in with us. We've got a heck of a stream planned for us. We've got a bunch of business to attend to. We know the DNC is right in the middle of day 2. We're going to just poke inside and see what these weirdos are up to before we jump into some good documents that we have in store for ourselves. We're going to go through some big ones. One is an OIG report that came from the Department of Homeland Security, Office of the Inspector General. And this one is pretty horrific, actually. It's looking like the Kamala Harris and Joe Biden administration, through Alejandro Mayorkas and Homeland and the border failures and border czar and all the things, looking like they lost track of a bunch of kids, like 200,000 plus kids gone. 291,000. Didn't get new court dates to appear, and the report warns us when that happens, very likely that we lose them. They go into trafficking or other, bondage. So it's a horrific thing enabled by our own government. And so the blood is on their hands, and we'll go through that report in detail. We also have another update. 2 letters went out from some senators very unhappy with what Homeland is doing because they have demanded answers from them, right? Homeland, Secret Service, FBI, all of these people.
There's
get letters
someone
from Congress. We read through them here all the time, like, oh, another letter. But they're interesting, right? We learn some new things in these letters. And eventually, the theory is they culminate into some action from Congress. But Congress has sent multiple letters to Homeland, and they just send them materials back. Like, don't get me wrong, there's a back and forth. But what Congress gets are just big redacted documents, no actual substance or material inside. And so Grassley and some other senators are responding and saying, this is absolutely ridiculous. Like, we're Congress, we're the Senate now, so give us the information we want. And they're saying that the Secret Service and Homeland, right, they're covering up for themselves. They are corrupt institutions. That's why at the DNC, we're seeing a lot of people talking about protecting the institutions, upholding the institutions. Why is that? Well, it's because they control them. They're in total control of the institution. They've commandeered them for their own corrupt purposes. So of course they want to uphold them. They don't want anybody to challenge them or get rid of them. So we'll go through all of that. And there's a big story out today that Tim Walz lied again. We've already covered his command sergeant major dishonor and gone through that at length. But now there's a new one. This was also a pretty big one. He's saying that he and his wife apparently put on a campaign solicitation that their family used IVF or was a recipient of IVF or have kids because of IVF, in vitro fertilization, which has been the big thing that the Democrats have been talking about for a long time, saying that J.D. Vance made some inappropriate digs at that, people noticing that Kamala Harris doesn't have any kids, and so the whole kid thing is kind of a prickly position now in this election. But Tim Walz, apparently, he gets so confused with his labels, Command Sergeant Major, Sergeant Master, it's very confusing. And now he's saying that they also used IVF, when in fact they didn't. So he's just misappropriating, just like stolen valor, stolen in vitro. And it's a weird thing, right? This was the guy, we made a point about him, kind of that guy when you were a young kid, sitting around the campfire, your friend's dad, who was a little bit weird, had too many beers, would sit there and say, remember, yeah, I almost made the Navy SEALs and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, dude. Like, that never happened, clearly. That's like Tim Walz. He's like, this guy who just keeps popping up, like, with these crazy old stories. What the hell's he talking about? And so, we've got 3 good segments to attend to. Let's poke around and see, before we jump into it, what they're doing at the DNC, this group of Democrats. You can see we got a schedule today on the docket starting at 5:30 Chicago time. We're going to have some people come out. Mitch Landrieu, right? DNC mega dude. We got a rabbi is doing an invocation and an imam. Whew, we got a rabbi and an imam doing the invocation. Wow. I guess no Christian pastors made the cut today. All right. Anyways, Pledge of Allegiance, like they care, if they can remember it. National Anthem, remarks, and other remarks. All right, so we'll have the grandson of JFK, the grandson of Jimmy Carter, like people care. We're going to have a member of the House of Representatives. Kyle Sweetser is going to be a former Donald Trump voter. Wow. Man, Kyle, what happened to you, bro? I don't know. Stephanie Grisham is going to be there, former Trump's White House press secretary. Don't remember who she is. Nabila Noor, some content creator. United States Senator from Michigan, Gary Peters, is going to be there. Retired Teamster, Kenneth will be there. Although I think they snubbed the rest of the Teamsters. Anna Navarro is going to be there from the Young Turks. She's going to be doing some stuff. Chuck Schumer from the Senate. Bernie Sanders, the millionaires and the billionaires are going to be out. And the Honorable J.B. Pritzker from Illinois, Honorable. Ken Chenault, business, Lujan Grisham, governor of New Mexico, that insane governor who just decided that she was going to get rid of the Second Amendment that one time because she had a bad day. Angela Also Brooks is running for the Senate in Maryland. She's coming out. Brought up by Barack Obama at 10 o'clock. And that's curious. Is that earlier than Joe? I think that was earlier than Joe. Or if they're on time, it'll definitely be earlier than Joe. Because he didn't come out, I think, until, what was that, 11:30 Eastern time? So about 10:30. So he's scheduled, I think Biden was scheduled earlier, but they just bumped him. So we'll see if they bump Barack Obama and whether that will stand or not. But that's what's happening there tonight. So we'll keep our eye on what's cooking. There's also fencing going up all around the area. An additional layer of fencing has been put up near the site of yesterday's protest. And so you can see our friend BG on the scene, who's always doing amazing reporting on this stuff, is over there. And he's showing us double fences, man. Double fence. They're not playing around. Right? They don't want any nonsense happening here because it'll make them look bad. And so your free speech and your protests can get the hell out of here, okay? We're Democrats. We don't tolerate any of that. Now, some new policies have come down today, apparently. I've seen some reports on this. Kamala's policies so far, this is insane, by the way, if this is true. 28% corporate tax, 44.6% capital gains tax, and a 25% tax on unrealized gains. We're totally doomed if she wins. So Watcher.guru is also talking about that, saying her new proposal is going to be backing Biden's tax proposal, which is, of course, is the highest in history, which also includes 25% taxes on unrealized gains. Insane. So that's going to be devastating if that ultimately comes into fruition for whatever reason. Now, this is what it looks like here from NBC News. And so we'll check back in on this. We'll see what's happening there. Harrison Walls, they're there. You can see there is the DNC situation back there. It looks like, full crowd. Kamala made her impromptu appearance last night. And I think the only reason they did that is because the Biden stink, the coup stink, was so bad that they had to have her come out and say something on that night, right? It's like if you're at a toast, like at a dinner table, and there's like a toast, and you're like, you have to say something. No, I don't want to say anything about this guy. I freaking hate this guy. You have to say something. Like, you're here, you knew her, so stand up and say, well, I don't want to. It's like, so Kamala's like, fine, I guess I'll say something. So they just shoved her out there for 3 minutes. She made her little token gesture for Joe, and then they put her back under seal. So that's the update quickly from the DNC, what's happening tonight. We'll keep our eye on it. We'll check back in on that here in a little bit to see what's cooking out there. But this is the big story of the day. Tim Walz busted lying again. And the New York Times in this article is doing their very, very best to cover for him, to make a bunch of excuses like, it's confusing terminology and all these letters are a lot of work to remember. It's very complicated. And so guys like Tim Walz and lefty Democrats who live their entire lives based on acronyms, LGBTQ+, expialidocious, so all the different letters are in there, and they live by this. Apparently, he got confused about IVF. Now let's go through this you might say ordinarily, one of these slips, if he made a mistake one time with his stolen valor, if he makes a mistake one time, oh no, it wasn't IVF, right, it was IUI or whatever, you give him that. But the guy is just lying all the time, right? They're like little fibs that turn into actual lies. Lied about his tacos, said he doesn't even like spices on his tacos. Yeah, you do, dude. We're in that cooking competition. Like, why do you have to lie about tacos of all things? You're so weird. You're lying about IVF. You're lying about your rank. The dude's just a liar, and he was obviously not vetted appropriately. And you know this personality type, right? You've met this person in your life. Like, dude, you don't have to one-up us on everything, okay? Like, you're okay. You can be here. Just sit there and you should be normal. Like that one friend, from middle school. Like, just be normal, please. Now, unlike in vitro, the procedure used by the Wallses, here's the headline, that his journey ran not through IVF, but through another common treatment. Now, let's get into this because there's a clear campaign lie that is documented by the Times. As Walls introduced himself to the country, he's alluded to a journey. He's always alluding to these things. Through infertility, his journey through infertility for his family, while warning that conservatives want to restrict IVF. Here's what he said. Even if we wouldn't make the same choice for ourselves, there's a golden rule, mind your own damn business when he's not setting up snitch lines for people to report COVID violations. Mr. Wall said on the night that Kamala introduced him, he said, look, that includes IVF. And this gets personal for me and my family, IVF, because you're implying that he went through it, right? Many have assumed that his family relied on IVF to conceive their 2 children. But several news outlets, including the Times, the Associated Press, the Minnesota Star Tribune, have reported all that the family relied on in vitro. Okay, the New York Times linking to themselves. They didn't do that, but they did. The Associated Press, they all posted fake news. Now, fertility advocates concluded as much after hearing Mr. Walls talk. In April, Tim Walz for governor, their campaign office, mailed out a fundraising letter in an envelope that said this, quote, in an envelope, my wife and I used IVF to start a family. So that, if you're reading that, that means to the person who's receiving that message that they actually got the procedure done, right? But when asked if the Wallses wanted to share more details about their efforts to conceive, the Harry Walls campaign recently clarified that the couple did not rely on IVF at all, but rather another common fertility procedure called intrauterine insemination, or IUI. That's really strange. It's like, why he did it again? His command sergeant major, no, it's not what your rank was. Well, I wanted it to be. Well, it's not what you retired with, so you can't keep saying that. IVF is very politically appropriate right now. But that's not what he did. The treatments have a key distinction, okay? They're not the same. Unlike IVF, IUI does not involve creating or discarding embryos, which is the big problem with IVF, right? The idea with IVF is that you get, 4 or 5 embryos, you inseminate them, then you implant them back into the woman. And in doing that, you're going to lose some embryos, right? And there's a problem with that. People say, well, it's like discarding a potential life, so that's a problem. IUI does not have that same distinction. But for people having trouble getting pregnant, the procedures are often linked. Now, this is where the quote comes in from the Times. Some patients say that they're doing IVF. It's just a catch-all for a wide range of fertility treatments. It's like, I'm just going to the doctor to get something done. No, it's pretty specific. Walls has said that he and his wife spent 7 years trying to have children. Now, IVF has a much higher success rate than the others, but reproductive endocrinologists and fertility doctors may suggest that people struggling with infertility start with the IUI, much less expensive, much less invasive. In both cases, patients often take hormone medication to induce or to augment the ovulation, and individuals who are going through 2 procedures often walk through similar emotional journeys, so it's like close enough, where success can bring elation, but the results, if you fail, are devastating. You understand? Now, those who begin such treatments can also find themselves entering a word of dizzying and occasionally awkward medical terminology. It's so confusing for him. and here we're going to get into a lot of TMI, but IUI works by taking some, male juice and trying to mimic natural conception. The IVF process often involves creating and freezing multiple embryos in the laboratory and then transferring the ones that's probably the healthiest. But since Mr. Walls began sharing his story, he has typically referred to his family as having undergone treatments like IVF. Governor Walls talks how normal people talk, they said, okay? He was using commonly understood shorthand for these treatments. Again, like, why do they have to explain everything that comes out of this guy's mouth? By tying IVF to his family's experience, Walls has become a powerful messenger for the Democratic Party on a difficult issue. Yeah, even though he has no connection to it, who have tried to distance themselves to restrict the popular procedure. And Trump has come out and I believe said that he's for this, okay? He's for IVF. Now, infertility struggles are common. 1 in 7 women have them, and so it's complicated. Now, the issue of this entered the national spotlight when stuff in Alabama came out. He posted on Facebook, apparently, Gwen and I have 2 beautiful children because of reproductive health care like IVF. Don't let these guys get away with you telling you that they support IVF when their handpicked judges oppose it. And blasting JD Vance for IVF as though he's like he did it.
Howdy, everybody. I'm sorry.
Now, yeah, this woman was very excited about this. She's a ranking Democrat on the Veterans Affairs Committee.
It's to be a quiet stream.
She recalled coming away from the speech with an understanding that Mr. Walls was an IVF dad, right? So even fooled another Democrat. Ms. Kalora said that she was surprised but not bothered to learn that, no, it was actually different. Yeah, that's close enough. Somebody is actually telling their fertility story, and that's what counts. And these are very delicate, so it's close enough, right? It's the same thing. In a statement, Ms. Walls, who was working as a high school English teacher as the couple was undergoing fertility treatment, said that the only person who knew in detail what it was a next-door neighbor. She was a nurse. She helped me with the IUI process. And the journey that is infertility, desperation eats away at her soul. So the guy just lies, right? He just lies about stuff. He put it on a campaign envelope. They used IVF. My wife and I used IVF to start a family. No, you didn't. You used IUI. I'm a command sergeant major. No, you're not. I was the high school coach. No, you weren't. You were an assistant coach. I don't like spices on my tacos. Yes, you do. You won a cooking competition 3 times. Why are you lying about all this stuff? And he comes across as like this folksy, down-to-earth dude who's just going to tell you, the truth and speak plainly with you because he's he's one of us kind of a thing. No, not true at all. The dude's a snake and a liar. Tom S. Elliott dropped this one on X, and he put together a banger thread where we can hear him actually articulate all of this stuff.
Today's IVF day. Thank God from IVF, my wife and I have 2 beautiful children. He thinks he needs to dictate that, and I've been saying this, the golden rule that makes small towns work so we're not at each other's throats all the time in a little town is, mind your own damn business. I don't need him to tell me about my family. I don't need to tell him my wife's health care and her reproductive rights. I don't need him telling my children what books they can read. He's fired to do that with whatever he wants, but I'm not interested in it. And I think rural America is, they are angry.
Don't tell me about my family, okay? I wouldn't have my kids, essentially. Crazy. Here's another one. Here's Walls 2 weeks ago in Philadelphia talking about it. This gets personal for me and my family.
Look, that includes IVF. And this gets personal for me and my family.
Why? You didn't do it.
When my wife and I decided to have children, we spent years going through infertility treatments. And I remember praying every night for a call for good news. The pit in my stomach when the phone rang, and the agony when we heard that the treatments hadn't worked. So it wasn't by chance that when we welcomed our daughter into the world, we named her Hope.
Yeah, but you didn't. She's not from IVF, dude.
When Vice President and I talk about freedom, we mean the freedom to make your own healthcare decisions.
And to lie about whatever happened in the
jabs?
past. Nobody cares. Here's another one from Walls. He's in Wisconsin 2 weeks ago. Thomas Elliott does great work on this. Says, some of you may have heard this. Here's Walls in another state, Wisconsin.
Years of fertility treatments. And I remember each night praying that the call was going to come and it was going to be good news. The phone would ring, tenseness in my stomach,
Same speech.
and then the agony when you heard the treatments hadn't worked. So it wasn't by chance that when we welcomed our first child, our beautiful daughter, we named her Hope.
Again, right? Grifting off of this IVF stuff. Here in Arizona, he was pretending to cry, apparently.
When we wanted to have children, we went through years. I'm not crying, you're crying, so...
You're not crying, yeah, because you're telling another lie story. So, of course, the story is pretty bad. If it was on its own, if he didn't have multiple other lies, I think maybe people would say, whatever, it's not that big of a deal. But the guy just keeps making stuff up. And so even the Kamala campaign is exploiting this. So here's what they posted. This is from Kamala HQ, their campaign Twitter account. It says, if it was up to JD Vance, I wouldn't have a family because of IVF. I wouldn't have a family if JD had his way.
Yeah, first of all, if it was up to him, I wouldn't have a family because of IVF and the things that we need to do reproductive. My kids were born through that that way. And also, I make
Whoa! My kids were born through that way? That's the most damning one of all.
sure that I'm the guys and our folks are investing in prenatal care. We're the ones that are there for universal pre-K. One bit on this whole family values thing, and it's us. That construct that he's putting out there is absolutely untrue. We're making it more affordable to have children by having paid family and medical leave so that you can go home when your kids are sick and take care of them. Or if you're a dad, I don't have to go right back to work.
Who's
5
paying
days
for
later
that?
after my wife had a C-section because our insurance.
Who's paying for that?
No, you should get
Paid
3 months
medical
of
leave.
paternity leave,
Who's
like
paying for it?
And those things up. There's nothing pro-family other than having
We are.
incubators for their vision of this. And I don't know. Once again, it's weird. I don't want JD Vance talking about my family. I certainly don't want him talking about my daughter or my wife. It's none of his business. But I said the one thing is we need to talk about how we've invested in families. We have the most generous child tax credit, and it's what Vice President Harris is proposing for the country, that people are poor because they don't have money. And when kids don't have the money on the front end, all of the things that a chain reaction of can't learn, can't go on. So I'll challenge him on that. Where is JD Vance's pro-family? He's forcing people to have, not be able to have medical care if they have a bad pregnancy or something. We need to.
A bad pregnancy? What the fuck is he talking about?
You don't need me to.
What the
give
fuck
sermon.
is a bad pregnancy?
Try and be decent. Try and help your neighbors.
That dude just talked so much garbage out of his mouth. It's pretty amazing. Did you hear him say something like, if you don't have money, then you're going to be poor. And so we have to give them money so that they can do stuff so that they're not poor anymore. You're like, gosh. But he talks fast, and he sounds actually like he's saying some stuff. Joe Biden had this same shtick, by the way, for a long time. Joe did this for 30 years. Remember, we see those old videos of Joe 30 years ago, 80s and 90s. He'd go into these little town halls, and he would just scream at people. He would talk very fast, talk very loudly, say a bunch of words, use a bunch of vocabulary that, the little peasants like us couldn't understand. And then everybody would go, well, I guess there's like really no internet, nobody's fact checking anything, or independent journos were not calling them out, so they could just run their mouths, and the journalists just kind of played the game, and everybody just played the game. Now people are cross-referencing this. Okay, now you can't just come out here and say stuff like this. This is crazy.
Yeah, first of all, if it's up to him, I wouldn't have a family because of IVF and the things that we need to do reproductive. My kids were born through that that way, and also
my kids were born through that way. That is not true at all. That is a direct lie. In addition to the statement that he posted on his campaign solicitation. So the Kamala campaign is now talking about that. Look, if it was up to JD, he says, where's JD Vance's program, right? He's going to come in there and have my daughter have kids or something. These people are nuts. But JD Vance actually responded today. He said, today it came out that Tim Walz had lied about having a family via IVF. Who lies about something like that? Tim Walz does. The Democrats' newest addition, Kamala's first pick, her first decision.
Yeah, but the thing is, no media will report that.
And over and over again. So what do you do with somebody like this? This is a dangerous person when they have really no scruples, right? Eventually, that friend of yours who's always lying about everything, you kind of have to create some distance because it becomes like a toxic danger. And they're lying about everything. They're going to get themselves into trouble, you into trouble. And I think that's where they're going with this. But they're squirrely, they're sneaky, right? And if you've got a folksy appeal and you kind of sound good and you say a bunch of stupid stuff like Hope in Chains and Joy, the new one, then people will buy it. because they're so petrified of Trump and they've been brainwashed through, I don't know, 10 years now, 8 years of just pure propaganda and an onslaught from all the institutions and the media centers around us. But what do you do about this? Well, J.D. Vance is doing some debate prep. He got asked a question. How are you prepping for this, J.D.? What are you going to do when you're dealing with a bona fide liar? Listen.
To know how you were prepping for a debate with Tim Walz, who has described himself as a bad debater. Who's helping you, and how are you prepping?
Well, I found a good friend from back home who embellishes and lies a lot, and I'm having him stand in for Tim Walz. That's what we're doing during our debate.
How you
I went and found the biggest liar that I know. Guy's a total liar. Makes up stuff all the time. So I'm going to do some practice rounds with him because he's, a liar. So it'll just be like the same thing, whatever. So here's more JD, more seriously. He's talking about his record. Guy just lies constantly. And so here's what he is saying in response.
He acts like such a tough guy, my friends. I don't know if you saw this, but Tim Walz said that he would debate me anytime, anywhere. So he threw out October 1st, a debate moderated by CBS, which I'm sure is going to be in the tank for the Democrats, but who cares? Because I respect the American people to go before hostile media.
Scared.
But when he says he'll debate anytime, anywhere, he apparently didn't mean in mid-September, because I offered him a debate in front of CNN, not exactly friends of me and Donald Trump. And you know what Tim Walz said? No thanks. Because they are hiding from the American people. My message to Kamala and Tim Walz, but especially to the American people, is you deserve to out there and talk to people. Kamala and Tim, stop hiding in the basement. Get out there and campaign. We'd all appreciate it quite a bit.
Yeah, do something. Answer some questions from the American people. Stop your little patty cake game where you guys sit around and talk about tacos, okay? People are not interested. Now, Trump was also out today, and he is explaining that he really knows who Kamala is, which is good, because she's pretty careful. Trump knows who he's up against.
Oh my God. Shut up!
All right, love. Talk to you later.